Let's talk about timesheets now. So here's the thing with timesheets. That's what we're talking about today. Here is a template for a timesheet in Excel that I've made, and you can download this on the assignment. I'm giving you this template. So the goal with timesheet, I will start by saying this is not going to be a particularly difficult assignment from a sort of like computering point of view. It'll be very simple. This is more about thinking through something in a very specific way. And the thinking through of something that I want you to do is learning how to sort of budget and value people's time. Here at school, it's not something that is going to be on your radar as much because you're usually the people working on the projects with you at school are not getting paid at all, much less by the hour. So you don't have to worry so much about it. But in the big wide world, people cost money. So if you want someone to work with you on a project, and if you're supervising them, you have to pay them for the time that they spend working with you. Now that could be, sometimes that'll be by the hour, sometimes it'll be by the gig, but generally speaking, crew tends to get paid by the hour. And you will, regardless of where you're working and how big their budgets are, everything, they will have a labor budget, right? They will have a certain amount of money that they have set aside to pay people, your crew, to work on this thing. And you want to make sure that you figure out a way to get the job done without going over that budget. That's the first priority. But the second priority is that usually in most labor budgets there will be sort of like a little bit of a reserve or a buffer. Hopefully there is. But if they are, depending on what the crew's employment status is, whether they're working for the IATSE union or maybe they're staff at the company or something, there will almost always be some type of overtime policy, meaning that regardless of your budget, there's a certain number of hours that you can let somebody work in a week. And beyond that number of hours, it starts becoming, what many would decide would be unreasonable. So that's an unreasonable amount of hours to make someone work consistently every week. And so once you get to that threshold of whatever that number of hours are, then any hours you make them work after that, you have to pay them extra money for. In most cases, it's called time and a half, which sort of means if you're paying them $20 an hour normally, in overtime they would make $30 an hour. So it gets really expensive really quickly. And that's the whole point, is you want, it should be very expensive for you to overwork somebody. Because you don't want to do that, and you don't want to incentivize that. So most companies that I've worked for, they avoid overtime hours. They'll do anything to avoid paying someone overtime because overtime is so expensive. And if you are responsible for supervising a crew and you are consistently putting people into overtime, that's going to reflect very poorly on you as a supervisor. And you want to make sure that you're not doing that. So there's really those two things there, is how to work within a labor budget, how to make sure that you're not putting people into overtime. But then the other part of a timesheet that sort of from an educational point of view that we want you guys to learn is how to estimate how long things will take to do. right? So if you're looking at a list of tasks that need to be performed, like we got to load in the system, we got to tech the show, we got to do whatever, knowing how long it takes to do all those things, being able to accurately predict that so that you can schedule people ahead of time and not end up having to go into overtime or pay them more than you've budgeted because it took longer than you thought it would. So that's one thing that we have you guys practice with these timesheets as well, is estimating a schedule and how long it will take, and then recording how long it actually took so you can start getting a sense of the difference between your guess and reality. So this is a timesheet that I just made this. This is just an Excel sheet. I just made it. There's nothing super special about this. This Excel file is not the point. Okay, it's just the thing I'm giving you to work with. There are 100 different ways of doing timesheets and schedules and stuff like that, and this is not really a class in all those different ways. So I'm just going to show you this thing that I've created because the thing that I've noticed over the years, this template is new. I made this like a year or so ago because I've noticed that when students were making the timesheets, they were spending so much time focusing on how to create the timesheet that they were not spending anywhere near as much time on thinking about the schedule, right, and how to budget all that time. And that's the point. I didn't want them spending all this time learning how to wrangle Excel or CAD or something to make this timesheet. So that's why I've just created a template that makes it really easy. So let me show you how it works. So you'll get this thing, and you have two tabs here. One is called the sort of person template, and the other thing is called the call time menu. The call time menu is just like this is the list of possible times that you could start or end a call. And I'm defaulting to a 24-hour period here that starts at 9 a.m. And what you want to do is, just depending on your project and when you're going to work, you just want to go over here and change this first thing to whatever the earliest call time will be on your show. For example, if you're never going to call anyone before 2 p.m., then just go here into this first cell and put 2 p.m. And then it will automatically populate in 30-minute intervals the next 24 hours, okay? And that'll just make your life a little bit easier when you're putting in these times. So I'm going to change it back to 9 a.m. The first thing you'll do, if you're going to put a schedule together for somebody, each of these sheets would be for a person that's on your crew. So the first thing I would do is just make a copy of this tab, so you're not editing the original. So create a copy of the person template, and then I would call this is Jason. And then up here under team member, call this Jason. Now, you can also have a cell here that says the budget of weekly hours for that person. So right now, I have the budget set to 25 hours. Normally, this would probably be something like 40 hours in the big wide world. 25 hours is what I'm going to have you guys use because that's essentially what your weekly labor budget is per person on production. And that's because that's related to the number of credit hours you're earning on the production course. So the number of credit hours that you guys take in production is supposed to equal approximately 25 hours per week that you work on shows. Now, here's the thing. We know that sometimes there are weeks where you're going to do more than 25 hours. It's going to be hard to get through a tech week and only have somebody putting 25 hours in. But you at least want to be aware of it. So what happens here is you've got the left side of this, which is all the blue cells. This is sort of your estimate. This is the schedule that you put together ahead of time of when you think people are going to need to work and how long they're going to need to work. You figure that out first, and then as you go through the project, you update this green side of it with what actually happened. Right? So you go through and say, all right, well, this is what I thought the schedule, the blue says what I thought the schedule was going to be that day. Here's what actually happened for this person. And that way, after the fact, you can go and compare, and you can say, oh, I thought that it was going to require this much time. It ended up taking 2 hours longer than I thought, so I'll know next time for that kind of task to estimate a little higher, okay? But here's the basic idea. So The other thing you need to do is decide the start date, which is the first day that you're going to call this person on a cruise. So I'm going to put today's date in, which would be 4/8/2020. And then what it'll do is it'll populate these days of the week and actual dates based on that start date. So you've got each of these sections is a week, right? A week worth of work. So today, let's say that the first call is going to be, for me, is 2 p.m. To 6 p.m. Okay? So you can just pick those from the menu for that cell. And then it automatically calculates how many hours that is. And let's say that that's it for the day. I'm just going to do that afternoon call, and then we'll be done. And then tomorrow, maybe I'll bring him in at 9, and we'll do a 9 to 1. And then I'll give him the afternoon off, and we'll come back in the evening and do 7 to 11. So what you notice is it's adding up the total for the day over here, the planned total for the day, and it's also adding the total for the week here. So it's 12 hours total for this week that I'm scheduling this person for. And then there's this other cell called the weekly average. The idea here being that maybe you're going to put somebody over the 25 hours in one week, but if they're under that 25 hours in another week, then in the end, the impact on your budget is negligible. Okay, so if you look here as I scroll down the weekly average, this weekly average gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Why? Because I haven't put any calls in for these other weeks. So I'm not bringing this person in at all right now during week 2, 3, 4. Look, they've got 2 week 3s. Well, that's easy to fix. So it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller because by the end of week 10 here, my weekly average is an hour basically, because I only did 12 hours of work during week 1 and then we never worked again. So if this was a total 10-week period for the show, I'm averaging out to be really low. So that can help you. So that's the basic idea, is you just go in and you put in this schedule. And you do one for everybody on your crew. And then you do all that ahead of time. And then as you go along, you fill out this green site. It's the same process. And you see how far you've got. Now, let's take a look at what that process might be. So this is an example of a tech schedule you might get from the production manager or the stage manager, sort of saying, hey, here is what we're going to do for tech and performance. And what you have to do is look at this and figure out, okay, what are my call times going to need to be? Keeping in mind that you want to try to stick with that 25 hours per week if at all possible. So let's just start plugging this stuff in. For the assignment, by the way, your assignment is to do a schedule for 2 people, yourself, who would be the A1, and an A2, who is on your crew. So you're going to do 2 schedules here. So let me start by just putting some of this in. So I'm just going to arrange this so I can see both things. So looks like my start day is February 21st, 2020. And if I just start plugging things in here, looks like there's an open work time from 2 to 6. Maybe I'll plan to use that. And then the cast is going to do spacing rehearsal from 7 to 11. So they might want us there for that. So let's go ahead and put that in. Okay, then on Saturday, we can come in from 10 to 11 to do some open work time, and then we're teching from 11 to 5. So I'm just going to just call that 11 or 10 to 5, and we'll see what happens here. And then we've got a dinner break. We come back at 7 and go till 11, but there's a production meeting at 11:05, which means I'm really probably not going to be able to go home until 11:30 because we'll have a 30-minute production meeting afterwards. Okay. Oops, let's see, that needs to be 11:30 p.m. There we go. All right, then on Sunday, we're coming in at 11 o'clock. And then there's a quick change rehearsal for an hour. Then we're going to do what they're calling a blood and vomit tech. Sounds like a lot of fun. And then we're teching until 4:30 when we take a dinner break. And then we come in, cast, we'll do vocal warm-up at 6 o'clock, preset on stage at 6:30. And then we're going to do address tech from 7 to 11. So I'm going to say that, we'll need to be there at 6 if Cass is going to be on stage. So we go to 6 again to 11:30. All right, so look what's happened here. See how this went red? It went red because I've gone over 25 hours for the week. See that? So let's just keep plugging it in here, and we'll see where we end up. So I'm just going to do 1 week's worth of calls here, and then we'll figure out how to fix it. So I'm going to go 2 to 6 will be the open work time, which we might need that. So then cast comes in at 6, and we go till 11:30 again. So I'll do 6 p.m. to 11:30. However, I want to make sure that we get a dinner break, so maybe I'll stop our afternoon work time at 5 p.m. That way we can get an hour break in between for dinner. Okay. Tuesday, looks like we can just do that 6 p.m. because now we're doing we're not doing an afternoon rehearsal, so we can do a 6 p.m. again to 11:30. And then Wednesday, we can do work notes from 2 to 6. And then Cass comes in, so I'm going to make that 2 to 5 again. That way we can do a 6 to 11:30. And then Thursday, we end up doing the 6 to 11:30. All right, so if I just plug this in like this, straight off the schedule that was given from stage management and say, here's all the times when we could ever possibly need to be there, in that week, I end up at 58 and a half hours, which is way over my 25, okay? So how could I shrink this down? How could I fix this so that it wasn't so many hours, but we still got everything done? Well, if we go back to the beginning here, maybe we say, hey, you know what? Do we really need to be there for a spacing rehearsal? Are we going to be doing any sound then? Maybe not. Maybe they would just say, you know what? If you could just turn the comm on so that we can have comm, and then you can go home, right? Okay, great. So we'll do that. We'll stay till 6. We'll turn the comm on, then we'll go home, and they don't need us there for that spacing rehearsal because it doesn't have anything to do with sound. So we'll just take that call out and say, great, we don't need that. What about Saturday? Well, if we're using that Friday 2 to 6 open work time, and then we're not doing anything again, with the show until we tech at 11, we're probably not going to use that 10 to 11 open work time. Right? What else would we do? We did our notes the day before. So maybe we don't really need to call people in until 11:30, just to kind of do a quick preset, get everything set up. Sorry, 10:30. And then, yeah, we'll tech till 5. We can't get around that. And then we'll do a 7 to 11 tech. Can't get around that. But as far as that production meeting goes, maybe, the A1 probably ought to be there for that, but the A2 can go home, right? So when I do the A2's calendar, I'll just send the A2 home at 11. And that'll cut 30 minutes off that person's time. But for me, I'll have to stay till 11:30. Okay, so let's look at Sunday here. So Sunday, there's got some open work time, TBD, followed by a quick change rehearsal and a blood and vomit tech. I would be really surprised that the quick change rehearsal and the blood and vomit tech would have a whole lot of sound involvement. Sometimes they might need sound just to do timing and stuff, like if they're timing something out. So we may want to be there just to play something, but we wouldn't need the whole crew. So you wouldn't have to call the A2 in for that. But you could probably just come in at 12 for the quick change rehearsal. Forget about the open work time, because if you've got notes, you could be working on that stuff, while they're doing quick changes. So I could say, all right, I'm not going to come in until 12 on that, and then I can do notes while they're doing all this nonsense, and that'll help a lot. All right, so then we've got cast, vocal warm-up on stage. Okay, so maybe that doesn't involve us. We can, preset on stage is at 6:30. So that's maybe I'll just call our crew in at 6:30. That way we can get that done, get our stuff done. We don't have to worry about cast on stage. Can't get around the dress tech, so let's look at Monday. All right, open work time on Monday. Okay, I'm not going to use that whole call, right? I'm just going to say I'm going to plan on a 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. just in case we've got some notes. We can just hammer them out real quick, and then we'll go home, and then we'll come in at 6:30 for our pre-show checks, and that will cut this thing down even more. Tuesday, same deal. I'll say this is 6:30 again. So I'm just trying to soften the blow here as much as I can. Same thing on Wednesday. I won't use that full open work time. I'll just do a 2 to 3. Get a few notes done if we need to. And then I'll flag that. I'll say, hey, look, if we don't have to come in, just we'll cancel that call, because that'll help us a lot. And I'll change that call time to 6:30 again. And I'll change this one to 6:30 again. Okay, so all right, I managed to get it down to 46.5, which is still over my 25. But it is Tech Week, and so to a certain extent we can't get around that. So this is about as tight as I think I can get this and still have us present at all the things we need to do. So that just means that the weeks after this and the weeks prior to this, I'm going to want to make sure that I go less than 25, right? So when we get into performances like this, where we're just doing the performances, I'm not going to be bringing people into the afternoons. I'll hopefully make up some of that time that way. So you just want to think about that, and hopefully your weekly averages will level out to 25 hours, okay? So that's the basic process, is to go through, try to figure out how to cover everything without overworking people, okay? So that is your assignment. Let me pull it up on Canvas here. And
Are we filling anything in for the green side, like the actual time?
No, leave that blank for now, because that'll be, that's when you find out whether your guess was close to reality.
Okay.
So let me show you here. No, that's the patch plot, sorry. We want timesheet assignment. All right, so I'm giving you the timesheet template that I've been working with, and I'm giving you a production calendar for the Nutcracker, okay? I'm specifically giving you the Nutcracker because we don't usually work sound on the Nutcracker, so you won't have a timesheet that you can go look at that someone's already done. But you're going to assume that you have an A1 and an A2. So you're going to look through that schedule, figure out, okay, when do you need to be there? But remember, think about, like, do we both need to be there? Or are there times when one of us could be there and the other could not be there? Could we stagger these calls in some way to keep these hours reasonable? That's what you're going to do, is go through that production calendar, create this timesheet, see if you can figure it out. Kelsey, your question, talk to production management, things. Here's the deal. Generally speaking, no one is going to care when your people are working or not working, as long as it's within the schedule that the stage manager or the production manager, depending on who's doing it on the show, that if they say, if you're going to be working outside of times that are on the schedule they put in, then you would want to let them know. But they usually don't care a whole lot about the nitty-gritty details. You may, if you're putting a schedule together, you may go ahead and share that with others just so they know. The times when you would want to get other people involved in the conversation is if you're getting to the point where it's like, hey, look, to cover all of this, there's no way to do this without putting people into overtime. I can't even make the averages work out. Like, there's so many hours on this thing. We've got to figure out a way to trim this down because people don't have time to do homework. And that's where you would get production management probably and or stage management involved in that to try to figure out how to make this more manageable. But you can't really have that conversation until you try to do this first pass at the calendar, and you'll find those problems. This spreadsheet will purposely make those cells red on a week where you're really pushing. So you do your best to try to make it work within the schedule that people give you. And if you've got a major problem like that, then yeah, go to production management or go to stage management, depending on, if there's a production manager on the show, go to the production manager, but there isn't always. And have that conversation and say, hey, how can we make this a little bit more manageable? Like, can I send the A2 home for this call? Or can we stagger it or something like that? Okay, your question about other crews. No, the other crews are other people's problems, right? So the only time you have to worry about other people's schedules is if you want to be working at the same time that they're going to be working, right? And if that's going to be a problem. For example, if if you're going to do some work notes, like this 2 to 3 work notes, if you think that you're going to be doing sound cues during that time, then you may want to find out if anyone else is working, and just let them know that, to say, hey, I'm going to do 2 to 3, and then I'm going to leave. And we're going to need to do some sound cues during that time. So we may be asking you to sort of turn off the tools for a minute while we run a cue or something. Or you guys could just wait and come in at 3 after we leave. That would be where you would maybe have a conversation with others, not because you care about their schedule or how much they're working. That's their problem. But if you're going to be sharing time with them and sharing that time is going to make it difficult for you to work or them to work, then you may want to have that conversation with them. But the purpose of this timesheet is really for you. It's for you to get good at predicting how long things will take and being conscious of the amount of work you're scheduling people for. Because if you don't write this down, if you just call people in every day, you're not keeping track of it, you could really be abusing people and not know it. So this process of going through and documenting it just helps you realize what's happening. And if the problem becomes bigger than you for some reason because other people are calling you in, like Scenery is telling you that you have to come in because they're going to be working and they don't want to step on your cables or something, then you have a conversation where you say, look, do we really need to be there for that? How can we figure this out so that we're not bringing people in? So that's your assignment. I've given you this. Let me show you what this schedule looks like for the Nutcracker. There's part of this is looking at it and figuring out which information applies to you, okay? Because some of this information applies to the dancers, for example. So a lot of this is kind of looking through here and figuring out, okay, what parts of this are going to require sound to be present? And take your best guess, right? You're just starting out on this. I get that, but you should be able to do a pretty good guess. If you guess wrong, I'll just let you know. If you miss something really obvious, I'll let you know. But if it's just like, oh, I didn't think we'd need to be there for that, and then we'll know. But you can see they've got some things in here about when they definitely want sound to be there. So they definitely want sound called at 12:30. So you might just want to think about, all right, called at 12:30, is that enough time? If I come in at 12:30 and they're starting at 1, is 30 minutes enough time for me to get everything turned on and ready to go? Maybe, maybe not. You kind of think about that. So that's what this is about, is trying to look and see how much of this is going to involve you and your A2. And then put this schedule together and try to see how close you can get to that 25 hours per week average. All right? It's okay if you go over in 1 week, but you want the average to be staying at that 25 hours by the end of the project. So then just upload the Excel spreadsheet, and we'll look at it next week. Any questions? All right, this should be a relatively simple project. It's more tedious than anything else, just the data entry part of it. But it should, I'm not going to give you any hard time about layout or colors or anything on this. All it is, I just want to let you take a moment to sort of start thinking about how long it takes to do things, and start getting yourself into the mindset of scheduling people and being respectful of their time. Because right now, that's really all you have to do, is just be respectful of it. Eventually, it's going to cost you money to have people there. And if you're the kind of person who, like I say, consistently is putting people into overtime, you're not going to be able to keep that up for very long professionally, because you're going to be an expensive supervisor. So yeah, that's the assignment. Take that Nutcracker calendar that I've linked to in the assignment description and create a timesheet based on that calendar. Any other questions? All righty. So I will see you all next week then. By the way, this afternoon at 2, I'm doing a demo on distorted reality on SoundGym, if you want to get some tips on that. The other thing I think I made this clear in the revised syllabus, given what's going on here, but because we missed a week, I had to pull one of the assignments that's on the syllabus. So there's a rigging diagram assignment, and I just gave you all full credit for it. And because we're not going to do it, because we don't have time to do it. So if you were following along and paying attention and wondering where that assignment went, that's where it went. So you'll take the rigging class and you'll learn rigging diagrams there and everything. So don't worry too much about it. You're not missing anything super major here. So I think that's it. And then next week, what are we doing next week? Look at that. Next week, we are going to start on the final project, okay? So we'll look at your timesheets real quick next week, and then I'll get you started on the final project. And at that point, you're just working on the project for the rest of the semester. It's a big project. You're going to generate a lot of paperwork, and we'll talk more about it next week, but that's the basic plan. All right, any other questions? Okay, good luck. I will see you all next week.